So the New Zealand Open was quite a regular fixture during that period, 88, 89, 91, 92, 93. You would have been a regular visitor during that period. I mean, what were New Zealand Opens like back then, and what was the feeling around? Where did you stay? Where did you eat? Um, give us some thoughts.
One year, that year at Paraparaumu, ADR, I think we stayed on that motel on the 11th hole. Is it 11 or 10 or 11?
10, okay.
The motel there.
Yep.
We just used to stay in. Remember the motel we used to stay at Titirangi, Heratonga. Don't remember. No, it was just a really good tournament. And Larry Nelson came and played a few years. Bill Rogers came down. So there were always a bunch of good players. Devlin used to play. Bobby Clampett played. That New Zealand Open always had a great field at Titirangi. So they're always good. I mean, Charlie obviously played. Shearer. Greg never played much. I don't remember Greg ever playing down there, but Peter Thompson was always there. So they're always, you'd look around the practice fair, and there were always good players around. It was a really important tournament on the Australian tour, really. And the money was not a whole lot different than what we played for in the Australian Open. So it was good money. There were good courses. There were good crowds. It was a really fun place to play. And back in the early 70s, they were playing 6 or 8 tournaments on that tour down. They used to play in Invercargill and Dunedin and all over the country. By 81, it was back to 3 tournaments: the PGA, the Open, and the New Zealand tournament.
Yep.
But it was always a great way to end the year.
Did you play in the Tiger Woods Open in 2002?
I did, yeah. I played that one. Yep.
Okay, now the course set up that day was possibly, as you described, very narrow fairways, very long rough.
Yeah, I remember I led the field in greens hit after 36 holes and missed the cut, which was kind of annoying. Not that I played that well, but I played okay, but I just didn't. Well, I hit the ball okay. I didn't play very well. But the course the greens were bad, weren't they? I remember the greens weren't great that year. They were kind of soft and powerish and bumpy. And
possibly.
Didn't Tiger 4-whack the second hole one day or something?
Yeah, he did on the last day at a 4-putt, which is probably a good segue to shift slightly into design aspects. Obviously, like I said at the start, you're quite involved in course design these days. You've done another number of projects yourself and some collaborations, new courses, restorations. Alec Russell is obviously the designer of our course, and I wanted to just start off by asking you. He only designed, or he's only credited with 5 designs, and it's probably fair to say that they're fairly exceptional designs, the 5 of them. What is it about Alec Russell and his philosophy that has made his designs, I guess, so enduring still to this day?
Well, I don't know what his philosophy was. He didn't write anything. So you never know what his philosophy was. You assume because he was Mackenzie's partner in Australia that his philosophy pretty much aligned with Mackenzie's. So I guess if you went and read Golf Architecture and Mackenzie's 13 Principles, they would probably align pretty much with what, or how Russell thought about the game. So all you can do is look at his courses and kind of glean what you can from his philosophies by what his courses look like. So he built beautiful bunkers at Royal Melbourne and Yarra Yarra. Widest fairways, greens that were best approach from one side versus the other, and the middle was never the perfect place. He built great par 3s, obviously. Great set at Paraparaumu, good lot at Karrinyup. East course at Royal Melbourne are exceptional. So, Riversdale's terrific. So you assume as I said, his philosophy pretty much aligned with Mackenzie's. And so reading Mackenzie's book, my assumption is that they were the things he believed in, which Mackenzie kind of wrote disparagingly about New Zealand golf. In the spirit of St Andrews, he said, New Zealand golf is dead. In fact, it's never been alive. Because committees there insist on using long grass as a penal hazard. As a consequence, golfers won't put up with the annoyance of looking for lost balls. So, I mean, that's not exactly right, but
Yep.
so, Paraparaumu was probably the one course that, and Mackenzie obviously never saw it. That was the one course that, there was a reason why it was the best course in New Zealand by a long way, and why Titirangi was the second best course, because those two men had such an influence on them.
Yeah, you're clearly, you're clearly a proponent of width, and that's been quite evident during the discussion at the moment. And I guess a lot of courses, through the early years of irrigation with single row irrigation, fairways tended to creep in and playing corridors kind of cramped up. We've just been going through in the last couple of years and actually automating our irrigation system. And as we've been doing it, we've been irrigating out to new mowing lines, and we try to take the width of the playing corridors out with short grass.
Which would only be good.
Yeah, so etc. So the argument could be, oh, you're making the course too easy, or I should be penalised if I hit a bad shot. I mean, talk me through some of those.
Well, the classic hole, I always thought that. In fact, I think obviously all the fairways, I missed that last day at Paraparaumu. One of them was the fourth, where it was almost impossible to hit it. But there's a green where you really should play to from the left. The problem I always meant was, because the greens tended to, the years I played, they were quite soft or softish. You clearly had to play, the best line into that back right flag was from the left. And it was hard to drive it up on the left, but the ball would always feed to the right. But the fairway was narrow, the ball would trickle off into the rough. Because the green was softer than ideal, you could always get it across that bunker and stop it. Whereas if the green was firm, you could cut that rough. You almost make it a common fairway with the third hole, right? So if that was all fairway and the ball bounced away to the right, you had that terrible angle. The further right you went, if my memory of the shot was right, you'd get behind that dune and it'd be blind if you went far enough right. And you're playing to a green that was hard and you couldn't stop the ball. So these people who argue that you're making the course wider, you're making it easier. Well, for a start, they're mostly 18 handicappers who can't break 85. So if you're making it easier for them, that's only a good thing. And look at how many great courses are wide, like Royal Melbourne, Augusta. There's so many great wide courses, but they rely on
the old course.
They rely on the old course. They rely on great greens complexes to make it more difficult for the player who's gone to the wrong part of that wide fairway. Yeah. So it's no good having wide fairways with greens, soft greens where you can play to from anywhere. But there isn't a course worth anything that's got greens like that. So one of the great things about Paraparaumu is, if you had all that rough that used to be right at the 8th hole, if that was all fairway down there, and the green was hard, you could go down there. And if you hit a great shot, you could stop it across that bunker on that narrow green. But to me, that would make that a more interesting hole, because you would have the option of going down the right, but the shot into that green was that much more difficult from the shot that you played to from the top of the hill going along that green. But because it's all rough, or because it used to be rough, no one ever went down there. No one ever thought to go down there. But that would make a cool option down there, playing it down that way. But if the pin was just over the bunker on the right, there was no one could get within 30 feet. If you wanted to go down there, you could at least try. So that's why the 17th hole there's, if you did a list of the best 18 holes in Australia and New Zealand, 17 at Paraparaumu would easily be on that list, and it might be one of the best 3 or 4 holes. It's an amazing hole because it's got that option of going down the right and playing to the green from a completely different angle than if you go down the left. So there are so many cool options that you can create with width. If you mowed that right fairway down as, if you grid all that as rough, you would make the hole harder, but you would make it way less interesting, and way less fun, and way less good. So why would you do that? And Paraparaumu is a windy, bouncy course with crumpled fairways, so it needs width. So, again, going back to that round I shot, crazy that on a day that difficult, on a course set up in the last round of the National Open, you could hit one fairway and shoot 65. So clearly I was playing well. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you the fairways are too narrow. That's what it tells me anyway.
Yeah.
Because I was playing well. And it wasn't like I had the sense playing that round that I was driving the ball badly. It was just that I was on it was almost impossible to hit the fairways.
Now, you've got a quote here I've heard you say, and I just want to throw it into the mix and get your thoughts on it. Golf is an inclemently unfair game.
Inherently unfair game.
Okay.
Yeah. So the basis of golf, well, golf started in Scotland, where by definition you were playing a lot of shots that people would argue today are unfair, like the Alps solid Prestwick or the Himalayas, where you're driving completely blind over sandhills, or all the bad bounces you can get off, all the, you can jam it up the face of the road hole bunker and you have to go out sideways, or the beardies, or there are so many things inherent in golf in Scotland that people would describe now as being unfair, which are all part of the game. And dealing with that unfairness was all part of it. Because with that unfairness, or in inverted commas, all that quirkiness, or the way the game was, came all the lucky bounces you got as well. I mean, you could skirt the right hole bunker by 3 yards and get a nice little kick and kick up around the corner up within 3 feet of the hole. So is that good luck or good management, or what is it? Well, it's just what the game is. The game gives and it takes away. So if you try, my argument is, if you try and make a course fair, or you try and make it difficult by growing the rough in, you take away things that are great about golf. And there's so much of the old course, which is the basis of all golf. There are so many things on that golf course that people would describe as, if you build it now, people would call it ridiculous and unfair. All the blind bunkers in the middle of the fairways. In fact, if you drive it down the 4-inch fairways, oftentimes from there you play it down the 5th. In fact, it was funny. I was playing the 1990 Open, I think, and I drove it down the. I was playing 14, and Steve was coming up the 5th. I assume he was coming for Floyd. And we kind of walked past each other. I was kind of looking at the shot, and he just looked at me and said, "Just hit it down the 5th," and kept walking. So, right. Which was probably a 2-shot penalty for both of us. But either way, if you build a hole now where the proper play was down the other fairway, people would just think that was completely ridiculous. But the old course is the basis of all golf. So people who tried to sanitize golf and make it fair, sometime after the Second World War, when America had more of an outside or an oversized influence on golf, and then PGA Tour players who all think the game should be fair, so that you've got consistent rough and every bunker's the same, and all the other stuff that those guys bitch about. You take away the fundamental essence of the game, because people have often said that golf reflects life, but life isn't fair either. It's not supposed to be. You try and make it as equitable as you can, but some people get a bad deal, and golf, which is clearly golf compared with life, is a pretty frivolous pursuit. It's fun, it's a game. Just deal with it, but don't ruin golf courses in an attempt to make them fair, because you will only ruin them.